Let me remind them then. And 2 minutes for no member.
2 minutes for observers.
Please take your seats. Please be seated.
Okay, let's start. Yes.
Good afternoon, everybody. Before we start, I wish to inform you that at the Bureau, we discuss this afternoon the proposal put forward by Australia to open a general discussion or general debate on item 8. But the Bureau consider that this debate should be rather occurred in conjunction with item 12A on Tuesday. So we will not discuss it today. We'll discuss it with item A on Tuesday. And the other issue regarding the management of our time, please, it will be 3 minutes for the member and 2 minutes for the observer because we don't have time at all. Now, we will proceed with our agenda item 8A, devoted to the tentative list and to the draft decision 42-8A. I invite Mr. Balsamo from the World Heritage Center to briefly present document 8A. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Document 42-8A presents the tentative list of all state parties submitted in conformity with the operational guidelines as of 15 April 2018. And in particular, Annex 1 presents the overall situation relative to tentative lists. Annex 2 of document 8A presents all the new tentative lists or addition to existing tentative lists which have been submitted by state parties since what the World Heritage Committee took note of at its last session in Krakow. And Annex 3 presents a list of all properties submitted on tentative lists received from state parties in alphabetical and regional order. As of 15 April 2018, of the 193 state parties which had ratified the convention at that date, 183 had submitted tentative lists in accordance with the requirements specified in the operational guidelines, and 10 state parties had not submitted any tentative list. All the nominations submitted for examination in 2018 are included on the tentative list of the state parties concerned. And since the preparation of document 8A for the 41st session of the committee in 2017, up until 15th of April last, 36 state parties have submitted new tentative lists or modified their existing lists. And the number of new properties added to existing tentative list is 88, which brings the total of sites currently included on the tentative list up to 1,714. Decision 42-8A is on page 2 of both the English and French version of the document you have in front of you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Balassamo, for the presentation. I would like now to know if you have any comments about the agenda. Any comments? No. So now I invite you to adopt the draft decision 42-8A. But before that, I ask the reporter if you have any amendments.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and a good afternoon to all colleagues. We haven't received any amendments to the draft decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dear colleague, I would like to recall before the proceeding with the examination of the item 8B that all the congratulation, please, should be held outside the plenary, because we don't have time to just take the floor and congratulate. It will last a very long time. So please, all the congratulation should be outside the plenary. Thank you very much. And now I therefore declare the draft decision 42-8A adopted. So now this. It is now time for us to consider nominations of property toward heritage lists. I would like to recall that the relevant working document concerning nomination are 8B and 8B added. The advisory body's evaluation can be found in the information document ICOMOS, INF 8B1 and INF 8B1 added, and IUCN info or 8B2 and info 8B2 added. Let me also recall that documents in INF 8B3 presents the list of all the nomination received by 1st February 2018, with the indication of those which were deemed complete. This nomination will not be discussed during our debate here, as they are foreseen to be examined at our next committee session in 2019. Document INF 8B4 presents factual errors identified by state party in the advisory body evaluations, and it was distributed to you on Monday, the first day of the committee session. I now invite the Secretariat to present this document and read out the list of nomination for which factual errors notification have been received, and and to some explanation, maybe, and to give some explanation. Mr. Balsamo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In accordance with paragraph 150 and Annex 12 of the operational guidelines, the notification of factual errors as submitted by the concerned state parties and reviewed by the relevant advisory body are presented in the language in which they have been submitted. It is important to recall that Annex 12 of the operational guidelines is the official format of submission of factual errors identified in the advisory body's evaluations, and only notifications received by the statutory deadline and submitted in the appropriate form of Annex 12 have been made available and included in document INF 8B4. The comments made by the advisory bodies in the right column indicate whether the information submitted is considered as a factual error or not. And this year we received 18 factual errors notifications concerning the following nomination to be examined at this session: Iran, Aras Barang Protected Area; Canada, Pimacho Aki; Mexico, Tehuacan Cahuatitlan Valley, originary habitat of Mesoamerica; Belgium, France, funeral and memorial sites of the First World War Western Front; Belgium, Netherlands, colonies of benevolence; China, historic monuments and sites of ancient Guangzhou, Saiton; and Denmark, Hasiva Visaitui, Nipisat, Inuit hunting ground between ice and sea; France, historic urban ensemble of Nimes; Germany, the archaeological border landscape of Edebay and the Dannevirk; Iran, Sassanid archaeological landscape of Far regions; Italy, Ivrea industrial city of the 20th century; Italy, le colline del Prosecco di Conegliano e Vadobbiene; Japan, hidden Christian sites in the Nagasaki region; Oman, ancient city of Kalat; Republic of Korea, Sansa Buddhist mountain monasteries in Korea; Saudi Arabia, Al-Aqsa oasis, an evolving cultural landscape; Spain, Caliphate city of Medina al-Sahara; and Turkey, Göbekli Tepe. And before the presentation of the concerned nominations by the advisory bodies, the Secretariat will announce the related factual error notification received. And if the notification of factual error has an impact on the proposed statement of OUB, the amendment is already included on the text that will be shown on the screen in track changes. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Balsamo. Are there any objection or comments? No. No. So thank you very much. I will continue. Let me now move to the first draft decision of the document 8B concerning proposal changes to names of properties already inscribed on the World Heritage List. I invite Mr. Balsamo to present this item, please. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first request for a name change concern the site of Jelling Mounts, Runic Stones and Church from Denmark, inscribed in 94. And the draft decision of this proposal following the technical review of ICOMOS of this proposal is for not approval. I will then stop for each of the draft decision, if you allow me. So we may consider this first proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Is there any objection or any comments? No. Okay. So I now invite invite you, Mr. Balsama. Is there any other comment? No? Thank you very much. So now we will adopt the draft decision 42 8B 1, 8B2, 8B3, and 8B4. And before that, we would like to know if there is any amendments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We didn't receive amendments to the draft decisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I therefore declare draft decision 42, 8B1, 8B2, 8B3, and 8B4 adopted. So our next point deals with the withdrawals of nomination to be examined by this session of the committee. I invite Mr. Balsamo to read out the list of the nominations withdrawn at the request of the concerned state party. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A total of 5 nominations were withdrawn. 2 of them were withdrawn prior to the publication of document 8B, while the other 3 were withdrawn after the publication of this document. And the 5 withdrawals are the following: Germany, the Jewish Cemetery Hamburg-Altona; Canada, Trondheim-Klondike; Japan, Amami-Oshima Highland, Tokunoshima Highland, the northern part of Okinawa Highland, and Iriomote Highland; Indonesia, Age of Trade, Old Town of Jakarta, formerly Old Batavia, and 4 outlying islands on Rast, Kelor, Chipir, and Bidadari; and United Arab Emirates, Cordoba, a traditional merchant harbor. Following these withdrawals, the committee will have to examine 28 nominations. Among them, 5 are for natural sites, 3 for mixed sites, and 20 for cultural sites. Just let me take this opportunity to remind that the complete PDF versions of all the nominations which are examined at this session have been made progressively available on consultation, for consultation on a secured web page of our website. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is there any comments? Okay, thank you very much. As we begin with this, with the examination of the nomination, I would like to take this opportunity to recall that committee decisions are based on objective and scientific considerations, and any appraisal made on its behalf must be thoroughly and responsibly carried out. The committee recognizes that such decisions depend upon a carefully prepared documentation, b thorough and consistent procedures, c evaluation by qualified experts, and d, if necessary, the use of expert referees. The document is requested, the committee is requested to examine the draft decisions presented in the relevant document, and in accordance with paragraph 153 of the operational guidelines and take its decisions. I wish to stress that for the referred nomination, there is no new nomination file to the prepared and there to be prepared, and there is no evaluation mission of the relevant advisory body foreseen to the site, also in compliance with the convention and the operational guidelines. Outstanding universal value is recognized at the time of the inscription of a property on the World Heritage List, and no recognition of outstanding universal value if foreseen prior to value is foreseen prior to this stage. I would like to appeal to you all for a strict respect of these important rules during our debate and our decision making. We can now proceed with the examination of nominations. This year, we will begin with cultural nomination. We will proceed with mixed nomination forward by natural nomination. The order of the examination of nominations is listed on page 3 of both English and French version of documents 8B, and I would kindly ask you to follow this order to the extent possible. For ease of reference, the page numbers of the evaluation and the advisory body documents are also shown in the PowerPoint presentations. I am going to call on ICOMOS and IUCN to be concise in their presentation, as you will be allocated 5 to 8 minutes to present each nomination depending on its category. Thank you in advance for your cooperation. Before we start examination nomination, I give the floor to the advisory bodies for a brief presentation. ICOMOS and IUCN, you have the floor. Excuse me. I now invite ICOMOS to present the nomination of Thimilish Ohenga Archaeological Site, Kenya. The draft decision concerning this nomination can be found in document 8B added. ICOMOS, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. Thimilish Ohenga is a referred back nomination which was first considered by the World Heritage Committee in 2015. At the time, the property was presented as a cultural landscape, and the committee recommended to reconceptualize the nomination as an archaeological site with an augmented comparative analysis. The committee suggested cooperation between ICOMOS and the state party, also in view of a needed boundary and buffer zone extension. An advisory mission to the property was undertaken in October 2017. Timlish Ohinga is an archaeological site, a complex of dry stone settlement enclosures called Ohinga, or Ohingni in plural, that date to the 14th century. They are located northwest of Migori town in the Lake Victoria region. Timlish Ohinga comprises one main Ohinga with several extensions and 3 adjacent Ohingni. The overall size of the property is 21 hectares, which is surrounded by a buffer zone of 33 hectares. The main Ohinga is referred to as Koshieng, while the others are called Kakuku, Kokech, and Koluoch. Each of the Ohingni has internal enclosures as well as smaller extensions adjacent to them, which accommodated homesteads, livestock, and craft industries. The dry stone enclosures in Timlish Ohinga document a specific concept of sustainable land use, which served different socioeconomic and linguistic groups through time. Its sustainability was ensured through the continuous transmission and maintenance tradition and knowledge of the traditional masonry techniques through apprenticeship. The walls range from 1.5 to 2.5 meters in height, with an average thickness of 1 meter. Circular depressions are associated with food preparation and storage. These depressions may also have been used for other functions, including fire pits or drying grain. Timlish Ohinga archaeological sites illustrates interior enclosure structures of various kinds, including cattle kraals or pens and garden fences. From 2007 onwards, a systematic archaeological study was carried out by the National Museums of Kenya to determine the content and possible functions on some of the features found within or in association with the large stone-walled enclosures. Further archaeological research was conducted in 2017 to better substantiate the referred back nomination. Timlish Ohinga exhibits a sophisticated system of dry stone wall masonry, which created meticulously arranged 3-faced, undressed stone walls, which have remained structurally stable over centuries. The walls are constructed in a 3-phase design, an outer and an inner phase of neatly arranged stones of all shapes and sizes, and a middle phase consisting of smaller stones, with the middle holding the stones of the inner and outer phases of the wall together. The nominated property serves also as a meeting venue for the community, where issues affecting them are deliberated. It also remains a location of community rituals, in particular in times of crisis. Based on the additional information provided, ICOMOS is now pleased to conclude that the property meets criteria 3, 4, and 5, and that the conditions of authenticity and integrity have been demonstrated. Integrity will be further strengthened once the full protection of the visual setting of the property is ensured. To ensure this, ICOMOS recommends to further expand the property beyond the extensions already proposed at its southeastern end and to fully correspond with the decision of the committee at its 39th session, as well as to further expand the buffer zone. ICOMOS recommends that Timlish Ohinga Archaeological Site Kenya be inscribed on the World Heritage List on the basis of criteria 3, 4, and 5. ICOMOS further recommends to establish a single database bringing together all available information on the property, to establish a comprehensive monitoring system, and to consider any further infrastructure or other developments in the site or the vicinity carefully by means of heritage impact assessments before their approval. Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Is there any other comments from? No.
Brazil.
No amendment.
Brazil.
Brazil, I haven't seen. The Brazil, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, at the outset, Brazil should like to thank ICOMOS for its presentation. Sorry, some magnetic interference. Brazil should like to thank ICOMOS for its presentation and commend Kenya for proposing this nomination. It is clear, Madam Chair, that the case before us show how much a state party can benefit from upstream advice. Even though the committee had decided at its 39th session to refer this nomination back to the state party, the content of this decision was rather of a deferral, which allowed Kenya, with the support of ICOMOS, to present a new revised nomination with expanded research, documentation, mapping, and a stronger comparative analysis and justification of OUV. The committee, if it wishes to change a deferred recommendation into decision of referral, it should at least take a clear instance on what is being recommended to the state party and on the possible role that can be played by ICOMOS. We therefore congratulate Kenya and ICOMOS for the joint work to make the dossier ready for inscription at this present session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now the floor is for Brazil, please. Zimbabwe, please, excuse me. Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Zimbabwe joins Brazil in thanking the government of Kenya and ICOMOS for working on this dossier over the last few years and ensuring that we now get a well-completed dossier. Coming from Zimbabwe and seeing the Timi Chohinga archaeological site, I am reminded of the great Zimbabwe, and therefore I am happy to find a relative on the World Heritage List. I therefore would like to really commend the state party for this site and to congratulate them on inscription of this property, which is the largest and the best preserved of these dry stone walled enclosures. So I really hope that we will be working together very closely in management and preservation of our sites. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now the floor is for Australia, please.
Madam Chair, Australia also supports the inscription of the Timilik Chohinga site in Kenya. We're very pleased to do so, and like my previous committee speakers, we also congratulate the state party in having addressed all the concerns of the 2015 decision and have worked so closely with ICOMOS. In reading this dossier, we were fascinated and impressed by the technical skill and aesthetics of the dry stone walls and the distinctive patterning of the traditional pastoral settlement. The property is an excellent addition to the site types and the values represented on the World Heritage List. And importantly, the inscription also addresses the objective of the global strategies in increasing the representation of the African sites on the list. So our congratulations to Kenya. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Norway, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wish to open by saying that this convention is the most powerful and recognized tool for protection and conservation of the most precious natural and cultural heritage we have in the world. And we, as members of the committee, have been elected by the 193 states parties to this convention to be the guardians of the outstanding universal value. And what makes the World Heritage unique amongst many other very important and significant conventions and mechanisms is the outstanding universal value, which we recognize at the time of inscription. And also, we like to emphasize that the OUV is carried by the three pillars of criteria, authenticity, integrity, and protection and management. We would also like to emphasize the importance of working in line with the principles of the global strategy, where we still have a long way to go. And finally, our decisions in the committee must be based on objective and scientific considerations. And we should aim to be constructive, work together, and contribute towards consensus decisions in line with the requirements of the operational guidelines and advice provided. And this is why I want to say, Napenda kumpongeza Kenya. Congratulations. We have before us a World Heritage property, which is a wonderful example of an African site where the traditional management system enhances and supplements the formal legal protection and management system. The property remains a location for community rituals and meetings, and the formal mechanisms are thus significantly enhanced by traditional rules and taboos maintained by community elders, which assist in protection of the property as well as its surrounding flora and fauna. It is of utmost importance that this strong community-based involvement and attachment is ensured for the future, and that any facilitation for development projects and further tourism to the site are sustainable and in respect of the true guardians of this remarkable site. We have taken note of the very successful collaboration between Kenya and ICOMOS, realizing the full potential of the upstream process, allowing the state party in due time to return to the World Heritage Committee with a successful high-quality nomination. Norway fully supports the draft decision, and we have full confidence that the state party will observe in particular para 4 of the draft decision. Norway would strongly welcome this site to the World Heritage List. Asante sana, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And now the floor is for Spain, please. Spain.
Gracias, señora.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. First of all, I would like to thank and congratulate the government of Kenya for the wonderful example of fortification in dry stone that is very similar to some that can be found in Mediterranean countries. Also a very good example of work done by a state party with the advisory bodies. And the referral of 2015 has led to a much more solid and consistent file, and we are certain that for the future this will improve the protection and conservation of this site. So congratulations and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now the floor is for Tunisia, please. Tunisia.
Merci, Madame la
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. Tunisia would like to express its full satisfaction at seeing the achievement of a lengthy process for this site that we have here with us today, and that has been carried out by all parties, including the advisory bodies. In particular, this upstream process has borne fruit, and so we would like to express our congratulations for the spirit in which the work has been done and for the inscription of this site, which will have a significant place in our universal heritage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Cuba, you have the floor.
Gracias, señora.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. Cuba would like to add its voice to those countries that have recognized the wonderful work done by the state parties to reformulate its file on the basis of remarks that had been presented, and we are favorable to the inscription of this site on the list. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Uganda, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. The delegation of Uganda joins all the other delegations in commending this heritage site for its nomination. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Bosnia, you have the floor.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. We also would like to join our colleagues to congratulate the State Party for the excellent work done in the preparation of this file, which we believe demonstrates excellent cooperation between the State Party and ICOMOS. We would also like to express our congratulations for the involvement of the local communities in the preparation of this file. And again, we would like to congratulate the State Party on this inscription. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Azerbaijan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Azerbaijan also would like to congratulate the State Party for this excellent nomination, which testifies the settlement patterns and spatial community relations in the Lake Victoria Basin. Also, the successive occupation by different people from the various linguistic origins during an important episode in the migration and the settlement of the Lake Victoria Basin between 16th and 17th centuries. It also gives a reference to habitation patterns, livestock cultivation, and craft practices prevalent in communal settlements at this time. The Azerbaijan commends the conservation and the management efforts of the State Party, and also the cooperation with the advisory body, which resulted in this successful nomination, and that's why we would like to join in congratulating the inscription. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I give the floor to China, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. China wishes to join all the other speakers in congratulating Kenya, the State Party of Kenya, for the successful inscription of Ohinga archaeological site. It's a wonderful work of collaboration between the State Party and the advisory body. We congratulate you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tanzania, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Tanzania also want to take this opportunity to commend Kenya for nomination, and in the same vein to encourage Kenya to make possible efforts to implement the recommendation of the World Heritage Center and its advisory bodies on expanding the property boundary, establishing a single database and monitoring system, and furthermore undertaking comprehensive heritage impact assessment for any infrastructure developed in and around the property. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. There is no other comments, I think. Okay, the reporter, if you have any amendments, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, we haven't received any amendments. However, if I may, I would like to, at this point, make a request to the distinguished members of the committee. When submitting revision of amendments you have already submitted, please use track changes, because without track changes, we run the risk of involuntarily omitting something from your amendments. So please, if you send us a revised version of the amendments, send them in with the track changes. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And now I therefore declare draft decision 42,8B14 adopted. Let me, on your behalf, congratulate Kenya, and now I give Kenya the floor. Please, Kenya, you have the floor too.
Madam President, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the inscription of Thimri Chohinga Archaeological Site on World Heritage List today marks one of our happiest moments in the history of World Heritage Convention. I wish to thank the distinguished committee for giving us an opportunity to share with the world this outstanding site. As already been indicated in ICOMOS synthesis, the site was initially discussed during the 39th session of World Heritage Committee held in Bonn in 2015. Through the committee's decision, the site was refined for more work that included but not limited to augmenting the comparative analysis and extending the boundaries of the site. Through the support of World Heritage Center and ICOMOS, Kenya received financial and technical support to revise the nomination dossier. The State Party of Kenya, therefore, wishes to sincerely thank the World Heritage Center for its financial assistance and ICOMOS for its untiring support made through numerous Skype meetings with the National Museums of Kenya scientists. Further, I wish to thank ICOMOS for the mission to the site in the framework of upstream process that enhanced the nomination dossier. Sincere gratitude also goes to the experts from Uppsala University and the University of Nairobi for their participation to deliver a successful dossier. Madam President, we have a lot of faith on the upstream process. We have seen it work. We wish to thank the committee for giving us a second chance with this site and for your favorable decision today. I wish to pledge on behalf of State Party Kenya that we shall endeavor to implement the 5 recommendations in the decision to further enhance the protection of Thimri Chohinga Archaeological Site. Plans to extend the boundary of the site are at advanced stage to acquire more land on southeastern section of the site. We shall make requisite report within the time frame indicated in the decision. It is our hope that with continued support by advisory bodies, Kenya will enhance protection of this site and advance standards on other fortification within Kenya, which has over 500 dry stone fortification of the same time period as Thimri Chohinga. Kenya also extends an invitation to interested researchers in the discipline of archaeology and architecture to consider further research on this dry stone fortification in Kenya. In Swahili, I say, asante sana Thank you all.
Thank you very much. And now we turn to the second site, and I now invite ICOMOS to present the nomination of the ancient city of Kalat, Oman. But before I give the floor to the Secretariat, Mr. Balsamo, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to announce that we received a factual error notification concerning the nomination of ancient city of Kalat from Oman, and this notification is to be found on page 76 of the English version of document in Faith Before, and on page 80 of the French version of the same document. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And now I give ICOMOS the floor, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. The ancient city of Kalat was an important port at the East Arabian coast, which flourished in the 11th to 15th century Christian era under the ruling of the Princess of Hormuz. Following Portuguese attacks, it was abandoned in the 16th century and has remained an archaeological site. The port city is located at the eastern coast of the Sultanate of Oman, approximately 20 kilometers north of the city of Sur. The former settlement stretches across a length of 1,600 meters and covers an overall area of 35 hectares. The nominated property includes the entire ancient city of Kalat, demarcated by its inner and outer walls, as well as areas outside the walls where the necropolis is situated. The ancient city of Kalat represents an exceptional testimony to the Kingdom of Hormuz, which flourished in the region of the Strait of Hormuz from the 11th to the 17th century. It was one of the few major trade hubs which came under the rule of the Princess of Hormuz and tremendously profited from its geopolitical position in the region. In the 13th century, Kalat likely controlled most of the Indian Ocean trade. The city was not only visited and seasonally resided in by various rulers, but also served as a refuge during times of conflict and a place of exile. It hence had a strategic trade and defense importance, but also political relevance to the Kingdom of Hormuz. The historic city has been divided into several quarters for the purpose of archaeological documentation. The central quarter is located between two wadis and has been identified as the most ancient part of the city, dating back to around 1100 CE. Other quarters are dominated by private dwellings with clusters of residences and other functions organized around squares. Recent excavations discovered a small mosque, a private dwelling, and what was likely a store. The urban plan and the excavated buildings of Kalat show features and characteristics specific to the Kingdom of Hormuz, and the archaeological remains are its most complete representation and provide further potential for more detailed understanding of its ways of life and trade. In addition to the architectural and urban attributes, the property is supported by societal traditions, including visits made to the Bibi Mariam mausoleum by the local population for blessings and offerings. Before the property was closed to public for conservation, the section of the site around Bibi Mariam was protected by the residents of a neighboring village, and this guardianship tradition will be reactivated as part of a future visitor concept. As an abandoned archaeological site, Kalat's architectural and urban fabric and form remain authentic, almost untouched, as does its setting, with the exception of a highway touching the southwestern boundary. The property was systematically inventoried by means of digital photogrammetry, GIS, and documentation of the visible structures in situ as part of archaeological research and conservation activities. A site-specific documentation center has been established to provide a central archive of site-related information, and conservation works are presently underway and aim to be completed by 2019. In June 2018, the State Party, with its factual error letter, submitted revised maps with adjusted boundaries and a finalized management plan, which seems to have been formally adopted. However, this information arrived too late to be considered within this evaluation report. Therefore, our evaluation report concludes in recognizing that criteria 2 and 3 have been demonstrated, but that integrity needs to be improved by means of a boundary adjustment. This is also reflected in this overview, where boundaries are required to include the seashores, as documented in the latest maps received, and a management and conservation plan remain to be finalized. In conclusion, ICOMOS recommended referral based on these missing elements, as well as to strengthen human capacities, in particular in relation to continuous site management and conservation methods and skills. ICOMOS further recommends to approach future developments with extreme caution, always applying heritage impact assessments before any developments are being approved, as well as to follow a minimum intervention approach to the conservation of archaeological remains. Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Is there any comments or inquiries? Bahrain, please. Here, Kuwait.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We commend the State Party of Oman for submitting this nomination to the World Heritage List. And as ICOMOS has just expressed, 2 criteria has already been met, in addition to the legal protection and other critical elements for any inscription. It is our understanding that the State Party has already taken some measures to ensure protection and management of the site, and we would kindly ask you to give the floor to the State Party to present to the committee these efforts that took place that I think have addressed the requirements needed for inscriptions, and we have submitted an amendment with regards to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I give the floor to Kuwait, please. Kuwait.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciation of ICOMOS evaluation and their recognition of the value of the ancient city of Qalhat. We would like to highlight the commitment demonstrated by State Party by promptly responding to ICOMOS recommendation on the sites, and particularly those which are concerned with integrity in the light of the inclusion of the shoreline and exclusion of the highway out of the property. The issue of the highway was addressed due to the use of 2 different projections for the coordinates by different institutions, and this has been adjusted. Henceforth, the highway is excluded from the borders of the property. As for the shoreline, although it was protected by the government of the State Party, the Ministry of Heritage and Culture included the shoreline within its properties. As for the site management plan, it has been finalized, adopted, and shared with the advisory body. The plan addresses almost all concerns that came in the recommendations, including the human resources strengthening and the local community engagement in the decision-making process and the general heritage impact assessment. Although the visitor management is considered in the already prepared site management plan, the State Party is in the process of developing a comprehensive visitor management plan to include visitation, master plan, and more elaborated heritage impact assessment in conformity with ICOMOS 2011, also to address any future infrastructure within the site. My delegation commends the State Party for its prompt response and commitment, and we believe that this exceptional site deserves to be inscribed in the criteria 2 and 3. Therefore, we are in full support with the amendment on the draft decision with the State Parties of Bahrain, Tanzania, and Tunisia. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now the floor is for Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Azerbaijan congratulates the State Party with this very successful nomination, which indeed provides the exceptional archaeological evidence for the trade exchanges between the East Arabian coast, Indian, reaching as far as China and Southeast Asia. As such, the property provides evidence of the Indian Ocean trade networks which predated the arrival of the European powers. At the same time, the city was a twin city of the Hormuz and the second capital of the Kingdom of Hormuz, which acted as a refugee during the period of disorder and conflicts. As it was already stated by the ICOMOS, the criterion 2 and 3 has been justified with this nomination. The only missing elements were the minor boundary modification and the management plan, which are already also provided by the state party to the advisory bodies. So with this in mind, my delegation would like to join the previous speakers and for those amendments has been done for the inscription of this site. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. While thanking ICOMOS for its report, Brazil wishes to express its deep appreciation to the State Party of Oman for presenting this nominated property, which, if inscribed, will surely enrich the World Heritage List. Brazil goes along with ICOMOS that Kalhat exhibits tangible traces of the unique exchange of the interchanges that the unique Kingdom of Hormuz, both culturally and commercially, enjoyed with East Africa, China, India, and beyond Southeast Asia, thus confirming justification of criteria 2 and 3, even though criteria 2 was not proposed by the state party concerned. We believe that the conditions of authenticity and integrity are fully demonstrated, though Brazil highly recommends that through a minor boundary modification procedure, the state party exclude the highway from the site borders and consider including the shoreline within the boundaries due to the significance of the sea in these exchanges of values that are reflected in the property. In our point of view, the committee should inscribe this property at the present session, considering all the recommendations proposed by ICOMOS, especially with regards to the proposed boundaries and the final adoption of the management plan. A draft amendment has been circulated in this regard, which has the full support of Brazil, but we would like to pose a question to ICOMOS if it is in agreement with the proposed statement of OUV. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And now the floor is for Indonesia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Indonesia would like to comment on the work of the advisory bodies in evaluating the nomination of ancient city of Kalhat. We note that further consultation has been undertaken between the ICOMOS and Oman particularly in re-evaluating 3 criteria that could appropriately be considered for inscription in the World Heritage List. In this regard, Indonesia supports this proposal of distinguished other delegations from Bahrain and Kuwait and the others that has been make a statement to inscribe the ancient city of Kalhat based on 2 criteria, 2 and 3, which has been justified in the evaluation report. We also would like to commend the state party for its proposal to reduce the criteria for inscription. This is, in our view, will make it more visible for the state party to conserve the OUV of the property following inscription. We encourage the state party to take further steps in implementing the committee's recommendations. We underline the importance of management plan in ensuring the preservation, protection and the conservation of the OUV property by enhancing the human resources capacity. We look forward, the state party, to finalizing the management plan in a holistic manner. We are also of the view that the state party could also take into account other important recommendations, particularly in strengthening monitoring system and undertaking the heritage impact assessment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tunisia, you have the floor.
شكرا سيدتي الرئيسة. أود أن أؤكد من خلال تدخلي هذا دعم تونس.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I should like to extend Tunisia's support for the inscription of this site on the World Heritage List. It's important for everybody's heritage, and we want to commend the State Party for the high-quality dossier presented for the inscription, and we'd like to thank the advisory bodies for all of their hard work on this, and that's why we would like to support the inscription of this site on the list. It's important not only for the list but also for the world heritage of everybody, one and all. Thank you.
For Norway.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have before us a highly interesting and important archaeological site which carries a significant potential for inclusion on the World Heritage List. We wish to emphasize the importance of observing the global strategy and furthermore our appreciation of seeing more World Heritage properties coming from the region in which we now have the privilege of being humble guests. We commend the State Party, having followed up closely on the advice provided by ICOMOS in various aspects of this nomination. We can only strongly encourage the continuation of what appears to be both a scientific, fruitful and cordial collaboration with mutual learning. We will strongly welcome the ancient city of Kalhat once the State Party has followed up and implemented ICOMOS recommendations and refined an already excellent nomination accordingly. We will listen very carefully to the State Party's clarification, and we will also wish to second the wise intervention by our distinguished colleague from Brazil, and we look forward to the response from ICOMOS. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Zimbabwe, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Zimbabwe notes that the ancient city of Kalhat represents a testimony of exceptional archaeological evidence for trade, exchanges between the East Arabian coast, India, and reaching as far as China and the rest of Southeast Asia. As such, the property provides evidence of the Indian Ocean trade networks, which predated the arrival of European colonial powers. The property exhibits physical evidence of cultural and commercial interchange of values extending to as far as East Africa. Zimbabwe therefore seconds the justification for inclusion of Criterion 2 on the basis of the cultural and commercial interchange of values within the trading range of the Kingdom of Hamas. Zimbabwe is of the view that the decision of the ancient city of Kalhat proposed for nomination by the State Party of Oman be changed from referral to inscribed, as it has managed to demonstrate with no doubt the presence of outstanding universal values through Criterion 2 and 3. In addition, it has also fulfilled the conditions of authenticity as set out in paragraph 79 and 86 of the operational guidelines of the World Heritage Convention. We therefore support as Zimbabwe the amended decision proposed by Bahrain and other state parties. I submit, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. China takes note of the evaluation report of ICOMOS. In the evaluation process of the OUV of the ancient city of Kalhat, ICOMOS underlines that Kalhat exhibits the values of commercial and cultural interchange along the maritime trade route of the Hormuz Kingdom, and that as an important node city along the intercontinental trade route. Kalhat has preserved the multicultural heritage left over from the medieval cosmopolitan city. Therefore, China fully supports the amendment draft decision proposed by Bahrain and other committee members to inscribe the property into the World Heritage List. China believes that the State Party will continue its further study and take actions on the site to better implement the suggestions in the evaluation report. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Australia similarly thanks Oman for this nomination of the wonderful site of Kalhat. Certainly the long history as a centre of trade and power over many centuries is remarkable. What we particularly noted was the integrity of the site as being exceptional in having archaeological remains that have remained undisturbed since the 16th century and that illustrate the role of the city in the networks of trade. We're very pleased to hear the progress of the State Party in addressing some of the recommendations in the evaluation report, and we look forward to hearing from the State Party. Australia will also support the draft amendments put forward by Bahrain and others to inscribe the property on the Criterion 2 and Criterion 3. And we look forward in future to learning much more about this site through further exemplary archaeological research, as we have heard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now the floor is for Kyrgyzstan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The delegation of Kyrgyzstan joins the amendment proposed by Bahrain and other countries to inscribe the ancient city of Kalat, Oman, on the World Heritage List. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, Sankits, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. St. Kitts and Nevis believes the state party has adequately met the criteria for the site and the conditions for authenticity and integrity, and commend them for the work done in this nomination. We too support the amendment for the inscription of the ancient city of Kalhat, as has already been indicated by previous speakers. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Now, Spain, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Spain would also like to reiterate everything that has been said by previous delegations when it comes to the value of this archaeological site, and that it does fulfill criteria 2 and 3. As has also been pointed out by the delegation of Brazil and that of Norway, we would be interested in knowing more about the state of implementation of the recommendations of the original draft, and we would also be interested in hearing a response from ICOMOS regarding Brazil's question. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And now, Tanzania, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, United Republic of Tanzania commends the State Party on the detailed and excellent work on this dossier of inscription of the ancient city of Kalhat in the Sultanate of Oman. Tanzania takes notes on the extraordinary effort realized by State Party on the preparation of the dossier on this old city, which was an important point of East Arabian coast, flourished on 11th and 15th century under the rule of Prince Hormuz. Delegation of Tanzania appreciated the comprehensive evaluation of the nomination dossier by ICOMOS, which considered that the comparative analysis justified consideration of this property of the World Heritage List. Tanzania notes that the ICOMOS fully agree that the criteria 2 and criteria 3 are justified. Madam Chair, as ICOMOS and State Party agree on OUV, integrity and authenticity, and also admit the management system of the site could be enhanced following some modification, the United Republic of Tanzania proposed that the ancient city of Kalhat be inscribed in the World Heritage List. Tanzania joined Bahrain, Kuwait, and Tunisia in the proposed amendment draft. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Hungary, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The Hungarian delegation supported the recommendation of ICOMOS, which advised that the nomination should be referred back to the State Party for slight additions and modifications. The most significant modifications which had to be made was the modification of the boundary of the proposed property in order to include the shoreline along the sea, as it had a great significance in the trade interaction at that time. Without this modification, the property could not have fulfilled the entire significance as a World Heritage Site. Hungary congratulates to the modifications made by the State Party and now supports the draft amendments submitted by Bahrain and other countries to inscribe the proposed property, the ancient city of Kalhat, in the World Heritage List. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Cuba, you have the floor.
Gracias, señora
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The delegation of Cuba would also like to add its voice to the congratulatory statements made by the delegations taking the floor before us when it comes to all of the endeavors undertaken to enhance this outstanding archaeological site, the ancient city of Kalat. And we do feel that this really does symbolize the intercultural dialogue and trade of the time, and also the dialogue and exchanges that have been undertaken between the advisory bodies and the state party. I think stand as a shining example and have also done much to improve the chances of inscription, and therefore Cuba would also like to endorse inscription of this site. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think now I give the ICOMOS to reply, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. The question asked, or the questions asked by the honorable delegation of Brazil concerned the changes of the boundaries as well as the statement of outstanding universal value that has been proposed. As mentioned in the presentation earlier, the state party has indeed submitted a changed map which indicate changed boundaries as part of the factual error procedures, and these boundaries do cover the shoreline and exclude the highway as was requested in our evaluation report. With regard to the statement of outstanding universal value, in the evaluation of nominations in which ICOMOS recommends referral but acknowledges that outstanding universal value has been demonstrated, ICOMOS does prepare a statement of outstanding universal value, which then usually as a standard procedure is integrated into the decision on a provisional basis. Which gives the state party and ICOMOS the opportunity over the course of the year to finalize the statement of outstanding universal value, which is then formally adopted in the following session. And we have only received the amendment now, so we did not have the opportunity to analyze the text submitted, but the usual procedure would be that the provisional statement of outstanding universal value that was prepared by ICOMOS would be integrated into the decision. Thank you, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Now I give the floor to our reporter to show us if there is the amendments. Definitely there is an amendment.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. As it was noted during the discussions, we have received draft amendments from Bahrain, Kuwait, Tunisia, and Tanzania, and we have heard a great deal of support for these amendments from the floor. As you know, the original draft decision called for this property to be referred back to the state party, and the proposed draft amendments would inscribe this property on the World Heritage List. Subsequently, this draft amendment now includes a provisional statement of outstanding universal value, and it includes the identification of criteria under which the property should be inscribed, an assessment of the conditions of integrity and authenticity, and we also have a statement on the protection and management requirements. Madam Chair, in the interest of time, I'm not going to read out all the proposed draft amendments, but you have them in front of you and you have them on the screen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So,
请问有反对意见、修改意见的吗？
Spain, please, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Yes, in relation to the proposed changes, not to the actual inscription itself, but perhaps I'm just wondering if the sponsoring countries could actually explain why do they want to include recommendations that are taken from the original proposed draft decision? Is it because they think it's a common sense choice, or do they think these recommendations to the state party on the part of ICOMOS are to encourage a further dialogue between the advisory bodies and the state party from a technical perspective? Will it in some way enhance the protection, for example? Could we hear on that, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Australia, please, you have the floor.
I just wanted to seek clarification. If we could scroll back to the text just above the proposed statement of outstanding universal value. Thank you. Could we just go up? It's very hard to see. No, other way. Sorry. Thank you. It's okay. I just wanted to be clear that the word provisional was in there and it zoomed past very quickly. So thank you. That's good.
It's acceptable, the text? Or you need clarification? No?
The original countries were asked to clarify.
Maybe Bahrain would like to clarify?
Yes, Madam Chair. As I have stated in my earlier intervention, that the State Party of Oman have already fulfilled some of these recommendations from ICOMOS, and I have requested kindly to give them the floor so that they can express to the committee all the efforts they have done to reassure the committee of their commitment of conserving and managing the sites in the appropriate manners that will meet the requirement of a World Heritage listing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Oman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving us the floor. We would like to thank ICOMOS for recognizing the OUV of the ancient city of Qalhat on the basis of criteria 2 and 3, its authenticity and integrity. As the work at the site has been continuing, the government of Oman has taken immediate actions to address all issues and most of the recommendations that ICOMOS evaluation report indicated. All these actions have been clearly presented, as been stated earlier, in the form for the submission of factoral errors, as shown in the document WHC 42com NB 8B4. Among these actions, the coordinates projection of the boundaries were officially adjusted and the shoreline was included in the property. This is officially attested in the property document of May 22, 2018, issued by our Ministry of Housing. The site management plan is completed and now officially approved and endorsed by the Minister of Heritage and Culture and in the process of implementation. The site management plan, published in paper and electronic format, implies strengthening the management capacities for its protection and maintenance in view of the reopening of the site to the public in the future. It also addresses tourism management and recommends the preparations of guidelines. The State Party fully agrees with ICOMOS' recommendation on the importance of conducting heritage impact assessment and consider that as a priority for the Ministry of Heritage and Culture. Meanwhile, the conservation guidelines are already in preparation and will include risk management and disaster response. The excavation and conservation work are joint since 2013 with the beginning of Qalhat Development Program, and there is a strong and coordinate interaction between the two actions. The Qalhat Development Program was launched with the purpose of increasing the historic and archaeological knowledge of the site, preserving its remains, and to enhance its importance for the public, all in respect of its authenticity and integrity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any inquiries or more clarification, or shall we adopt it as it is in front of you in the screen? Is there any somebody?
Is there any objection?
I don't see any objection. Is there any objection? No objection. So can we adopt the decision? No objection. So I therefore declare draft decision 42com 8B 15 adopted. On behalf of you all, I can congratulate Oman, and I give the floor to the representative of Oman to.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. شكرا سيدة الرئيسة. دعيني في البداية.
In the name of God, most compassionate and most merciful. First of all, Madam Chair, thank you very much and congratulations on your election as a chair of this session of the World Heritage Committee. And I want to thank the Kingdom of Bahrain for its outstanding hospitality and generosity to everyone here as a brethren nation of Oman. Of Bahrain, we are most grateful, and we want to thank the World Heritage Committee and the World Heritage Center for the successful inscription of this site on the World Heritage List. This site is our fifth site inscribed on the World Heritage List for Oman. And it was on our tentative list as of 2008. As of 1988, 30 years back, the authorities of our country wanted to see one of the rare pearls of our country inscribed on this prestigious list because the topography is well protected. It's protected it from modernity and recent developments in the country. The unanimity shown today for the inscription of this site on the World Heritage List will serve to ensure that this site is protected as a treasure for all of humanity. This property was an important node of trade between several different civilizations in its day. And it's the first pre-Islamic capital in Oman. We are firmly committed to undertake further archaeological excavations, which will enable us, surely, to uncover further treasures of this outstanding site. This will attract, in turn, more tourism and will increase the revenues to the local communities. We confirm before this committee that Oman will strictly comply with its management plan for the site and safeguard and protect it so as to protect its universal outstanding value. Again, thank you to the members of the committee. Thank you to the advisory bodies, in particular ICOMOS and its team of experts. They have really left no stone unturned when it came to assessing the nomination file for this property. And thank you very much to the Centre and to the committee for everything they've done for us and for World Heritage. Thank you.
شكرا لكم وألف مبروك للمرة الثانية.
Thank you very much.
I invite ICOMOS to present the nomination of Al-Ahsa, OISIS, and Developing Cultural Landscape, Saudi Arabia. And before I give the floor to the Secretariat, I now invite Mr. Balsamo to give his comments. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to remind the committee that we received a factual error notification concerning the nomination, actually the evaluation of the nomination Al-Ahsa Oasis, and it's to be found on page 83 of the English version of document in faith before, and on page 21 of the French version of the same document. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. ICOMOS? Yeah, I give the floor now to ICOMOS, please. ICOMOS.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Al Asa Oasis consists of palm groves and water channels, as well as buildings, urban fabric, and archaeological sites that together are seen to represent the evolution of an ancient cultural tradition in the Gulf region of the Arabian Peninsula from the Neolithic period up to the present day. In terms of categories of cultural property, this is a serial nomination of 12 sites. It is also nominated as a cultural landscape. The map shows the location of the property in the east of the Arabian Peninsula. The oasis of Al Asa lies between the desert and the coast, on a vast plain where groups began to settle in the Neolithic era, attracted by the abundance of water and a favorable natural environment. As the climate became drier, oasis life developed sometime during the 3rd millennium before the Christian era. The defining characteristics of Al Asa Oasis, the cultivation of dates and its complex water irrigation and management systems, appear to have been introduced in the Dilmun period, between the 3rd to the 2nd millennium before the Christian era, based on water management techniques from Mesopotamia. As the area grew enough crops to trade, prosperous towns arose linked to maritime routes around the Gulf and overland trade routes through the Arabian desert. The oasis was extended in the Islamic period, and by the 16th century there were more than 50 villages and 2 towns. Until the 1960s, the enlarged Dilmun structures still persisted. The distinctive water distribution system that circulated water from around a number of springs and wells to the palm groves through herringbone-patterned channels and then drained into Al Asfar Lake, an ensemble of villages and agricultural towns that managed the trade, and the oasis had become the largest in the world. Today, the oasis is described in the nomination dossier as having been transformed from changes undertaken to the irrigation system and from urban growth based on the oil industry. In 1967, an irrigation project was launched to address the waning efficiency of water distribution, and a new network of canals was laid. Although the new network has affected the traditional aspect of the property, the modern canals mostly follow the path of historic ones. Until the 1960s, the sharing of water was undertaken in a communal way based on agreement between farmers. Now the Al Hassan Irrigation and Drainage Authority is in charge of this aspect. As a result of these changes, the farming system has moved from community-led to a market-led economy. Villages have almost disappeared, with only parts of one, now unoccupied, having survived. The second transformation was the rapid expansion of the urban areas brought about by the development of the oil industry and the rebuilding of traditional structures in the existing towns. 12 component sites have been nominated, which together are seen to cover all the morphological elements of the oasis cultural landscape. These consist of 3 large palm groves with their irrigation channels, the Al Asfar Lake that collects surplus water from the canals, 2 archaeological sites at Ain Kinas and Jawatha with evidence of Neolithic pottery and later Islamic irrigation systems, part of Al Oyan village, which includes fragments of the unique typology of houses that persisted until the 1970s. Also included are the Jawatha Mosque, said to have been built over the traditional site of the second mosque in Islam and recently reconstructed, and the Al-Bataliya Mosque, also recently restored. The remaining components are 2 forts, a complex of Ottoman period buildings, and the 19th century souk, Al-Khazariya. The property is nominated as an evolving cultural landscape, and one that has changed dramatically since the 1960s. But the evolution has not primarily come about with the agricultural community being central players. Although the water channels still for the most part reflect their early alignment, the oasis cannot be said to reflect mainly traditional practices. Whereas in most cultural landscapes, some modern interventions have been introduced to support the persistence of practices, at Al Asa, the interventions have all but replaced such practices. Al Asa is no longer an overall eco-cultural system in which the technical and social management of water allows palm cultivation to support a social unit in a sustainable way. ICOMOS considers that the oasis system, which spread from Saudi Arabia across the Maghreb, is a settlement typology that is underrepresented on the World Heritage List. But at Al-Asa, the components do not combine to reflect the traditional structures of an oasis landscape in which the attributes that convey its value have persisted over time. ICOMOS does not consider that the criteria 3, 4, and 5 can be justified. The oasis no longer primarily reflects cultural traditions, as interventions have interrupted the long-standing relationship between people and the natural landscape, and it can no longer be seen as an exceptional testimony to a cultural tradition or as an outstanding example of traditional human settlement. The property also does not reflect in an outstanding way the periods of history that have shaped its development. In terms of integrity, development has engulfed parts of the oasis and changed its setting dramatically. Traditional villages have been replaced by modern urbanization to a degree that impacts on integrity. Authenticity is, in our view, not demonstrated overall for the series in terms of its ability to reflect the long-standing traditions of the oasis and its social structures. ICOMOS notes that Al-Asa has been nominated as an evolving landscape rather than an evolved one, which, as defined in the operational guidelines, clearly reflects the way it has evolved over time and needs to be sustained in the future. The idea of an evolving landscape appears to mean that the limits of permissible change are not clearly defined, nor precisely what cannot change, and this implies that its value could also evolve over time. In conclusion, ICOMOS also has concerns in terms of the boundaries, protection, conservation and management, where further work we consider is needed. In conclusion, ICOMOS recommends that the Al-Asa Oasis, as nominated as an evolving cultural landscape, should not be inscribed on the World Heritage List. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Is there any comments or inquiries? Kuwait, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This afternoon, I want to talk about a very special case. I want to talk about a piece of land that gave life to endless generation. A piece of hope, a piece of history, a true piece of life, Al-Asa Oasis. We are talking about the largest and most famous oasis in the world. Please, allow me to make 3 points today. Yes, the advisory board gave their negative decisions, but this committee gathered today makes the final decision. And there is precedent already allowing an alternate decision. We respect the procedure and we do not want to change the dignity of the procedure. But exceptions are made, and from exceptions comes progress and change. Many countries do not understand the vital importance of oases simply because they never historically faced harsh climates or do not have such large desert area to cross. Thus, the advisory board may not have taken these things in consideration, simply because it's not part of their historical struggle and survival. This is a unique case, and we need to give it a unique second look. Number 2, under this oasis lies the world's largest supply of oil, one that daily produces more than Norway, Azerbaijan, and Indonesia combined. Yet, for 50 years ago, there was royal decree banning any oil infrastructure within 120 kilometers of its premises. Why? Because over 1,000 years, this oasis gave water, shelter, and life to endless caravans, traders, and people who passed through. It saved too many cultures and generations to not be recognized. The government not only spent money, but so much selfless effort and time to maintain the oasis' dignity. Not only did this oasis provide life, today it's the home of the antiquities that are over 2,000 years old. A true home to religions and cultures way before Islam. There is true love and passion for this oasis. Just take a moment and look at the numerous researches done by Western and American historians, such as Vidal, who lived there for several months in the 50s. Or go back to 63 BC, to the Greek Strabo, who wrote about its importance as cultivated and agriculturally rich region. Yes, there is record from over 2,000 years ago. So in conclusion, I would like to make a plea. It is part an emotional plea, as I think of 1,000 years of beautiful palm trees and archaeological sites. It is part of an empirical plea, as I think of the deep and complicated role of this oasis had on the survival of so many cultures and people and the shaping of this peninsula. It is part of urgent plea that is our chance to show the world that although this may not be the typical cultural landscape that they are familiar with, it is definitely worth having an OUV, because without a doubt, it has outstanding universal value. Outstanding its own survival through the worst climate possible with dust and high temperatures. Universal in giving life to the numerous people and cultures who passed through for over 1,000 years. Value and the antiquities it still preserve. The State of Kuwait requests the Honor Committee members to support and approve the decision due to the significant site and its readiness. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Now the floor is for Bahrain. Burkina Faso.
Merci, Madame la
Thank you, Chair. Burkina Faso supports the amendment submitted by Kuwait with a view to inscribing Al Assa Oasis on the list of World Heritage for the following reason. We must not forget the important role that water has played in contributing to the formation of civilizations throughout the ages. However, in the past, we must not forget that Al Assa was a major agricultural site which was also home to people who had an exceptional level of expertise. Indeed, we do no longer need to show just how important this oasis was for the peoples of the Sahara and the Sahel region, it's in Africa, but also for people around the world. This is an interconnected area, and we find a complex situation, a complex network of mechanisms in this area. Indeed, the state was also taking all of the necessary measures in order to manage the Neolithic and archaeological sites that are found in the same region as this oasis. Therefore, I believe that we should support the amendment that has been made to this text by Kuwait. Thank you.
To Bahrain, please. Bahrain.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Al-Ahsa, a synthesis of the knowledge of the first urban civilizations of the third millennium and of the experience of the desert people, is a unique example of union of the sustainability characteristics of communities of oases with the dimensions of hydraulic societies. In the current hydro-agricultural network, it is possible to read the whole creative process, the development and the continuous efforts to transform desert into a living landscape, create the humus and the cooperative to realize the skills necessary to combat desertification and the progress of sand in a continuous evolutionary process. Al-Ahsa is the exceptional example of a vast oasis where archaeological remains, historical structures, crops, hydraulic machines, canals, distribution methods, water recycling, and the landscape of all the stadiums of information for the oasis and its evolutions are still present. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I give the floor to China.
Thank you, Madam Chair. China supports the draft submitted by Kuwait for the inscription of Al-Assa Oasis, an evolving cultural landscape for the following reasons. Al-Assa is located in the geological morphological area characterized by the meeting of different ecosystems. the rocky desert mountain, the sand desert, the coastal depression. These particular environmental and the landscape differences are among the determining factor of the genesis and the development of the oasis as a successful practice in the creation of living conditions in harsh conditions. Al-Hasa is a type of oasis characterized by historical presence of numerous springs around which the original oasis nucleus is created. From the water springs, the water flows into the brackish depression where the waters of the Wadi torrent mix with the coastal marine ones. An interchange is created between the nomadic environment, the farmer, and the fisherman. This condition, typical of Gulf area, has characterized the origin of the first oasis into the ancient civilization of Dilmun, flourishing thanks to the trade between Mesopotamia and the Indus Valley, where Al-Hasa economy contributed with the production of dates. China would like to listen to the Saudi expert to respond to the following question. The property is composed of 12 components with 7 buffer zones. Can the Saudi expert elaborate on how these components are linked? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now the floor is for Uganda.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The delegation of Uganda aligns itself to the statements made by Kuwait, China, Burkina Faso, and Bahrain in support of inscription of Al-Hasa Oasis, an evolving cultural landscape for the following reasons. 1, the palm groves of Al-Hasa are among the largest in the world and the only ones preserved on a vast scale. 2, the historical characteristics of cultivations and hydraulic systems based on traditional techniques remain unaltered even in the face of continued past and present technological evolution. 3, Al-Hasa shows a pattern of man-made transformation of the desert landscape at a scale unrivaled and unmatched in the world, and carried out according to unique methods developed in harmony with the very specific natural conditions of the area over thousands of years. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Tunisia, now do you have the floor?
شكرا سيدتي الرئيس.
Thank you, Chair. So I'd like to take the floor regarding this draft decision. Tunisia is also presenting this amendment. We're speaking about the Al-Hasa Oasis. It is a very rare oasis, a natural phenomenon, but also a human phenomenon, and one that is also linked to civilizations. It is extremely old and extremely important for the region, but it's also unique in the world. We don't find something like this in other countries, which do have oases, and I know what I'm speaking about because in Tunisia we also have oases. The irrigation system shows the interaction that this site has with man and the development of agriculture and architecture. These prove this fact. Man has been able to adapt to the difficult climate in the region thanks to the existence of this site. There are 3 criteria which have been examined here, 3, 4, and 5. These criteria allow us to consider that there is outstanding universal value. The response of the advisory bodies have evoked the need to protect the site through a legal framework. through a series of laws. We also have to recall that there are several laws and regulations that have been adopted in Saudi Arabia in order to do just that. For example, the Royal Decree, which dates back to the 1970s, 2014, 2015, and even as recent as 2016. There was also a decision taken by the Supreme Court in Saudi Arabia, dating back to 2009, which bans any kind of land-grabbing activities in this region. That is why I would like to hear from the experts regarding these three criteria that I have just brought up. Thank you.
Gracias, señora Presidenta.
Thank you, Chair. As we all know, water is essential in terms of survival in the desert. And indeed, we see that all types of practices which involve gathering and distributing, collecting and distributing water are extremely important. Indeed, this oasis is an example of a typography that is not very common in the World Heritage List. And if we believe it deserves to be included in the list, the nomination of Saudi Arabia is something that I believe we need to inscribe on the list through accepting this amendment. Thank you.
Now, Azerbaijan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nomination property Al-Aqsa Oasis consists of 12 components: gardens, canals, springs, wells, drainage lake, as well as historic building, urban, fabric, and archaeological site. Al-Aqsa is the largest oasis in the world with more than 2.5 million palm trees. Nominated property represents the evaluation of an ancient cultural tradition and the traces of sedentary human occupation of the Gulf region of the Arabian Peninsula from the Neolithic period up to the present. Environmental protection of the property is covered by the law of country. For the strengthening of the management of the site, the new management scheme formed a higher committee and a site management unit based in Al-Aqsa municipality. From our point of view, the comparative analysis justifies consideration of this property for the World Heritage List. The integrity of the nominated site justifies by structural and landscape integrity, integrity of use, development of the human settlements, and the control of the streets. The nominated property keeps the required outstanding universal value by the following criteria: its unique cultural landscape resulting from the interaction of man and nature in a particular geographic and geological position, which up to the present preserves material remains representing all stages of the oasis history. It bears testimony to human occupation for thousands of years up to the present. It includes historic building, religious sites, and agricultural landscape elements. And last one is the largest oasis in the world, containing, as I said, more than 2.5 million palm trees. So we can say that the proposed property meets the criteria 3, 4, and 5, and our sanctity and integrity requirements. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And now Spain, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Chair. We would like to welcome the work that has been done in order to protect the palm groves of this oasis. And we believe that the nomination file is been very well developed, and there's been a real effort to try and highlight the fact that properties such as this oasis are underrepresented on the list. Therefore, we believe that this site should be inscribed, this site that is fundamental in Arabic culture. We also believe that we have to continue working on the nomination, because there are also certain issues that we've just spoken about on other, for example, making sure that the buffer zones are clearly indicated. And perhaps that's why we also need to speak to the state party, these issues that came up with previous properties. That is why we would like to hear some of these clarifications, because in the report that has been presented by Saudi Arabia, there are certain affirmations which have been made regarding the integrity or authenticity of the property, which supposedly show testimony to the evolving nature of this oasis. However, also the fact that we are evolving away from the original state of this oasis. We would like to know how the state party has actually responding to all of the different concerns that have been raised by the advisory bodies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Brazil, you have the floor now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the outset, Brazil would like to thank ICOMOS for the presentation of its advisory report and commend Saudi Arabia for proposing this very interesting and thought-provoking nomination of a property whose typology should be better represented on the World Heritage List. The Brazilian delegation considers that the nomination of Al-Hassa Oasis has significant importance, since it presents exceptional examples of gardens, canals, springs, lakes, and of the evolved urban fabric in a dramatic and long-dated dialogue with the daring desert. It represents a significant example of human occupation of arid regions challenged by environmental conditions since ancient times. We understand that these features present important elements for the identification of attributes that could potentially convey the outstanding universal value for this property. We believe that the questions presented by ICOMOS could be overcome based on the exceptionality of the component sites in relation to the human appropriation of land tangibly expressed in the whole oasis, or at least substantial part of it, with regard to the management of the scarce water resources in desert landscapes. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Guatemala, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair. We would also like to congratulate the State Party for its nomination, and also we would like to thank ICOMOS for the draft decision. Now, the landscape of Al-Hassa includes gardens, architecture, and historical sites, and indeed, we know that there are also a large number, 2.5 million palm trees in this area. We also have to take into account the existence of the archaeological sites which show the existence of ancient civilizations, and indeed it is a site which has evidence of artifacts from the Neolithic era all the way up to the common day. The oasis allows us to trace the long history of human development and the relationship that humans have with nature. And it also shows humans' capacity, ability to change to the given environment. And indeed, this is a site that has evolved through the ages. Protecting these types of sites, humanity can learn more about how to adapt to certain extreme weather conditions, such as those brought about by climate change. That is why Guatemala wants to add its voice to those supporting this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Indonesia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Al-Hassa Oasis, an evolving cultural landscape, has been nominated under the criteria 3, 4, and 5 of the Outstanding Universal Values. As a property that covers a vast landscape with many features such as gardens, canals, springs, wells, an agricultural drainage lake, and historical buildings. The vastness of this property makes it taxing for the state party to meet the expected criteria for justification. Taking into account the criteria justified by the state party, we see that based on its historical values, the property can still be considered to meet the essence of the criteria. We therefore encourage the state party to consider implementing a monitoring regime at the property and establishing a clear management plan for the property, and to maintain dialogues with the advisory bodies following inscription. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Now I give ECOMOS the floor to reply. Australia. Excuse me. Australia, you have the floor.
Sorry, I raised the flag in your blind spot, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity. OASIS have been an integral part of the history of this region where we're meeting for thousands of years, and a remarkable demonstration of the interaction between people and their environment. We consider that the inscription of an oasis such as this on the World Heritage List would make a very positive contribution to meeting the aims of the global strategy for a representative, balanced and credible World Heritage List. Australia has carefully reviewed the nomination dossier and evaluation and the additional information by way of correction of factual errors, and our overarching assessment is that the Al Aqsa Oasis nomination, in it we do see the kernel of outstanding universal value. What we also see is that the nomination would be strengthened if the state party was able to give clearer expression to the contribution made to outstanding universal value by the irrigation and water systems of the oasis from the period prior to the 1960s. And this goes in particular to clarifying the attributes that demonstrate the authenticity and integrity of the evolved landscape. Logically, to Australia, this would best be achieved by deferring the nomination and allowing the state party to seek the advice of ICOMOS in reshaping it. However, as we have listened to the interventions of distinguished colleagues on this nomination, it seems there is a groundswell towards inscription of this property on the World Heritage List. In the spirit of consensus building that has been the hallmark of this meeting, Australia will not stand in the way of inscription of the Al Aqsa Oasis on the World Heritage List. We do hope, however, that in finalising its statement of outstanding universality value for future endorsement by the committee, the state party is able to address the matters raised in the evaluation related to integrity and authenticity of the site.
Thank you very much. Now I give the floor to ICOMOS.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Honourable Delegate of Azerbaijan, of Tunisia, asked to hear from the experts on the criteria, and I assume he meant ICOMOS. Before commenting on the criteria, may I just say one thing, that in reaching its conclusion for not to be inscribed on the World Heritage List, the ICOMOS panel was not saying that Al Aqsa Oasis had no value, but rather it could not justify the outstanding universal value on the basis of the nomination of an evolving cultural landscape as presented by the state party. I would just like to make that clarification. So it was in that context that we analysed the justifications for the criteria in terms of whether, as an evolving cultural landscape, these criteria were met. In our view, we could not support the idea that the property as it stands could be seen as an exceptional testimony to a cultural tradition, or indeed as an exceptional example of a traditional human settlement. We didn't think that either of these things were quite appropriate in terms of what has been nominated. What we are therefore saying is that it is the format and scope and way the nomination has been presented that at this stage does not meet the criteria or, in our view, justify outstanding universal value. That would not preclude in the future some other formulation being considered, but the ICOMOS panel could not see a way forward at the immediate time. I hope that gives some clarification. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Now I give the floor to Tunisia. Maybe you have more inquiries.
شكرا سيدتي الرئيسة وأشكر
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to ICOMOS for those clarifications. Personally, I had actually had in mind that perhaps we could hear from the State Party, but I do thank you, the representative of ICOMOS, for your clarifications.
We have it here, yeah. And now I give the State Party, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the floor for the clarification. Thank you very much.
شكرا سيدة الرئيسة.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. First of all, allow me to offer some responses to the questions or requests for clarification that have come out of the room. First of all, the Al-Aqsa Oasis is an outstanding example. It's unique in the world, particularly as it attests to human beings' adaptation to their climate and environment. A few hundred years, a few thousand years ago, this all began. And once upon a time, Saudi Arabia was a green space, but obviously as the climate has changed, things became different. And despite the changes, the people living in that region, in that climate and environment, were able to adapt to the conditions around them and manage to live in those climatic conditions. So it's true that we have traces of human settlement from around the region, from the Mediterranean. It was at the Phoenicians. In the Phoenician era, there are numerous examples which illustrate that this oasis was indeed a place a place encompassing many different sites and vestiges of human settlement. And from the 1950s onwards, a lot of research, in particular American research, has been undertaken, which attests to the importance of this oasis. Saudi Arabia had decided, and in fact, in fact, it was to protect the outstanding value of this oasis, decided to ensure that any oil prospecting was undertaken as far away from the site as possible. Thank you.
شكرا لكم.
Thank you very much.
Give the floor to Angola.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor, Madam Chair. After having heard from several states parties and their analyses, and in particular, now that we've heard the clarifications given by ICOMOS, we are also of the impression that the different characteristics justifying OUV and everyone's explanations as to the importance of the oasis and the water distribution systems, we get the feeling that there really was a problem of drawing a connection between those characteristics and the way in which the nomination file was actually drafted and put together. But having heard from ICOMOS, Angola is now in a position to go along with the other members of the committee in supporting the inscription of the property, and we encourage the State Party to bolster some of the protection measures envisaged and with a view to further safeguarding the sites to make sure that the inscription on the World Heritage List will also facilitate life for the local communities in the region. Thank you.
Other comments before we refer to our reporter? No? So you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. As it has been noted during the discussion, I have received amendments to the draft decision proposed by Kuwait, China, Tunisia, St. Kitts and Nevis, Cuba, Bahrain, Burkina Faso, and Uganda. and we have heard general support from the floor for these amendments. The original draft decision proposed that this property should not be inscribed on the World Heritage List, and the amendments proposed that this site should instead be inscribed on the World Heritage List. Subsequently, the draft that you see on the screens right now has a provisional statement of outstanding universal value that includes the identification of criteria under which the property should be inscribed. It has assessment of the conditions of integrity and authenticity. And we also have a statement on the protection requirements and the management requirements. Madam Chair, at this point, if I may, I would like to make a small editorial suggestion to the authors of the text, just for the sake of having a clear and coherent standardized text. If we could just scroll up a little bit to that. Yes, thank you. Too much? Yes. In the paragraphs below management and protection requirements, we see different ways of expressing dates. So I would like to suggest, with your permission, if we could use all the way through the text the standard format of dates, which would be the days followed by the month and followed by the year. This just to have a coherent and precise text. Other than that, Madam Chair, I will not read out the amendments, but everybody has it in front of them and on the screen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Is there any comments or clarification, Saudi Arabia or the other member, the committee? Do you have something? No. Nothing? Excuse me? You have? Please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to remind that if the committee is going in this direction, we have to take note of the following President's statement of you. Sorry, in the version that we had here, it was not mentioned, but I see that has been inserted in the version on the screen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. If there is no objection, we can go ahead and adopt the decision. Yeah, as amended. Okay. So I therefore declare draft decision 42, 8B, 16 adopted as amended. Thank you very much. I hope that you can register it next meeting or next year. And now, now we go to the decision related to China. I think China. I now invite ECOMOS to present the nomination of the historic monuments and sites of ancient Konzenhu, Zentun, China. And I give the floor to Mr. Balsamo to give you his thoughts. And now, excuse me, I give the floor to Saudi Arabia. If they want to say anything after we adopt the decision related Al-Ahsa. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I should like to extend our warmest thanks to you personally, but also to all of the committee members. Thank you to the World Heritage Committee for having inscribed the Al-Aqsa Oasis on the World Heritage List. We wanted to reassure you all that we are truly committed, and as is the government and as are the people, to safeguard and protect our heritage. And the heritage of the entire world. Our thanks go to you then, Madam Chair, for your excellent stewardship of this session of the World Heritage Committee. Thank you again. Thank you very much to you.
إلى موقع زيتون, China, and I give the floor now to Mr. Balsamo to give us his report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to remind the committee that we received a factual error notification concerning the nomination of the historic monuments and sites of Hanse and Quanchu, Saitan, and this is to be found on page 31 of the English version of document INF 8B4 and on page 35 of the French version of the same document. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, and now I give the floor to ICOMOS.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon. This is the presentation of the ICOMOS evaluation of historic monuments and sites of ancient Quanzhou, or Zaitan, in China. Quanzhou, known as Zaitan in Arabic and Western texts, was a prominent node in the maritime trading routes in the 10th to 14th centuries during the Song and Yuan dynasties of China. These formed part of the maritime silk routes, a counterpart to the land-based routes that are already reflected in inscriptions in the World Heritage List. This serial property consists of 16 components, including the remains of historical dock structures, bridge, pagodas, archaeological sites, inscriptions, and statues, temples, and shrines of diverse faiths. The 16 components are divided thematically into 3 groups. There are 8 components associated with the sites of maritime navigation and trade, including 2 pagodas. The remains of docks in the port and estuary and a porcelain kiln site are included, as are the temple for the worship of a Taoist deity and god of the sea, the Tianhu temple for the worship of a sea goddess, and a series of wind-praying rock carvings. The second category is multicultural sites and includes the Confucius Temple, a stone statue of the founder of Taoism, the Kaiyuan Temple with both Buddhist and Hindu elements, and a temple and statue of Mani, the world's only remaining stone statue of the founder of Manichaeism. Quanzhou's mosque and a pair of Islamic tombs are also included. The final category consists of 2 sites of urban infrastructure, the archaeological site of the Deji Gate and the stone Luoyang Bridge. Maritime silk routes is a relatively recent term that describes a number of historical periods and regional encounters. These were not single continuous avenues, but represent multiple smaller movements that together connected vast territories. Transnational research on the possible World Heritage thematic framing of maritime silk routes has just started, and the State Party does not consider that this nomination needs to wait for the work to progress. Discussions with the State Party have focused on how this nomination has been conceptualized. The State Party's approach has been to nominate a group of monuments and sites that are linked in their ability to express a specific historical period. However, ICOMOS does not consider that the potential outstanding universal value is clear if linked only to its historical period. The State Party has also clarified that it has not nominated Quanzhou as a cultural route or as a port city. However, the historical background rests on the existence of maritime routes, and the comparative analysis compares Quanzhou with other port cities.
The State Party submitted additional information in February 2018, which offered a revised justification of outstanding universal value focused on social and cultural traditions that are demonstrative of interchanges through trade and as an outstanding tradition of stone architecture and stonework craftsmanship. These were not accompanied by sufficient comparative study and evidence, but these new ideas, received at a late point in the process, underscores the view of ICOMOS that this proposal is still a work in progress, with much new and interesting work yet to be undertaken. ICOMOS considers that the comparative analysis does not justify the specific serial approach or the selection of the components. The authenticity of the individual components in relation to the historical period proposed is variable, and the integrity of the series is not justified due to the unresolved questions concerning the selection of the components. ICOMOS does not consider that any of the proposed criteria 2, 3, and 6 are demonstrated. The approach taken to nominating 16 sites in 3 different categories has also made it difficult to effectively apply 3 criteria across the entirety of the property. ICOMOS considers that the boundaries are mostly adequate, although the buffer zone protection could be simplified. The threats vary due to the diversity of the components and their urban, suburban, and scenic area settings. In general, the most significant pressures are those associated with urban and port development. The legal protection is adequate and the management system is appropriate, although the coordination could be further streamlined. ICOMOS considers that without further work on the thematic framework for the maritime silk routes, it is difficult to establish the outstanding universal value of the monuments and sites of Changzhou. Despite many sincere exchanges with the State Party, the specific orientation of this nomination remains unclear. A number of arguments have been presented, but each of these requires specific types of evidence, comparative analysis, and more work and cooperation. ICOMOS therefore finds with regret that the nominated serial property does not demonstrate outstanding universal value and recommends that the historic monuments and sites of ancient Changzhou, Zaiton, China, should not be inscribed on the World Heritage List. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Now, yeah, I see. What's that? Yeah, Tunisia asking for the. You have the floor.
Merci, Madame la.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Tunisia would like, first of all, offer its thanks after having studied the dossier to ICOMOS for all of its appraisals of the historic monuments and sites of ancient Zhuangzhou. And even though the recommendation from ICOMOS was one of non-inscription, given the elements comprised in this site, we do think that criteria 2, 5, and 6 could actually be interpreted differently, because the most important thing with the maritime silk roads actually look at the 12th to 14th century settlements, and we have to consider that this is a composite site where the level of protection and conservation is actually very high. So we think that, first of all, if we look at that is for certainly criteria theory, where you've got Confucianism, Hinduism, Manichaeism, local beliefs, Islam and Buddhism and Confucianism, mean that it really is a crossroads of religions and cultures. What's more, the monasteries, the pagodas do attest to these various religious practices, which is actually very rare elsewhere. What's more, the only stone statue remaining of Mani, the founder of Manichaeism, is a very noteworthy feature. and there's also a monumental sculpture of Lao Tzu, which is entirely preserved. The importance of all of these elements is not actually highlighted in the report, and we get the feeling that this has been a very technical study, going theme by theme on the Maritime Silk Route. And yet, this study was undertaken as a kind of in conjunction with the UNESCO report on the Maritime Silk Roads from 2008 and 2009. And so we do think that it's important to underscore the focus given to the study before us. What's more, the study to which we've returned did not actually find reflection in the most recent plan. So in conjunction with other members of the committee, we would prefer to move away from non-inscription and rather think of referring this file so that the state party concerned can have further monitoring, further study, and more transboundary dialogue of concerning with a view to inscribing this outstanding site later further down the track. Thank you. Kuwait now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The importance of sites of the World Heritage in the broader sense is to provide the sphere in which future populations can imagine and conceive new encounters with the other, and remind us of the times when such encounters produced that what was then a new reality, new ways of being, knowledge and novelty. During times of conflict and an unprecedented era of culture cleansing and wars that falsely claim a religious agenda, we believe that it is our duty as the custodians of the heritage of humanity to remind ourselves and highlight evidences of coexistence, cross-cultural dialogue, and harmony amongst different belief systems. Sites that demonstrate peace, harmony, and integrated multicultural societies should be encouraged, and the tangible manifestation of such values should be our priority. As an assembly of multi-civilization masterpieces featuring unique and exceptional physical forms and cultural richness, the historic monuments and sites of the ancient Quanzhou Zaytun demonstrates exceptional outcome of exchange of values amongst human cultures. The components of the property exhibit a fusion of diverse cultures in architecture, landscape, decorative art, as well as in aspects of spirituality and customs. The serial components of the site are also recognized by the integral study of the Silk Road, Roads of Dialogue, a 10-year UNESCO scientific research project with the participation of more than 100 experts from across the world, conducted from 1988 until 1997. And we suggest the need to refer to such important studies during the process evaluating nomination dossiers. Kuwait delegation supports the amendment to the draft decision to refer it back to the state party for further work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Zimbabwe, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having looked at the documents related to this property of the ancient Guangzhou, as well as having listened to the advisory body's description, Zimbabwe does not agree with the draft decision as it stands, but further recommends that this property be referred to allow for further work and clarification. The property clearly illustrates the bringing together of all the religions which are preserved at this site. The linkages between the different aspects and the different sites is clearly shown and is actually evident at the site. The advisory bodies had some concerns with the authenticity and integrity of the property. However, the main basis for not inscribing the property was the global thematic studies on the maritime silk routes, which have not yet been carried out. We do not think that it is fair to not take action on the basis of studies that have not been carried out. The delegation of Zimbabwe is of the opinion that this nomination was submitted in terms of the global strategy for a representative and balanced and credible World Heritage List, paragraph 55 to 58 of the operational guidelines, which seeks to identify and fill gaps in the World Heritage site. And we believe that this property does fulfill this missing link, where you find a place where all the religions are there, but also the trade routes to the different parts of the world are preserved and clearly illustrated. Zimbabwe is therefore a co-sponsor of the draft decision to refer this nomination to allow the state party to work with ICOMOS in clarifying the gray areas and to resubmit this site to the next meeting of the committee. We also urge that whatever thematic studies are required should be carried out as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Azerbaijan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The delegation of Azerbaijan also supports the amendment proposed by delegation of Tunisia to refer this nomination back to the state party. We carefully examined the ICOMOS report and the response from the state party to the ICOMOS evaluation. Pertaining to the combination of philosophy of the 16 components of this nomination mentioned by ICOMOS, the delegation of Azerbaijan thinks that this combination philosophy is very well justified. The nomination is composed of docks, bridges, storm carvings, temples, mosques, and many other monuments. They are combined to form the serial property as set of the monument sites that feature diverse physical forms and significance and exhibit the historical functions, attributes, features, and roles of the ancient Guangzhou. These interrelated components demonstrate cultural representativeness, mutual attraction, complementarity within the context of the interchange of diverse cultures, infrastructure necessary for such interchange, and significant achievements and contribution that occurred over a long period of 4 centuries. These components support the logical serial combination with their respective forms, features, roles, and significance. They are therefore indispensable and irreplaceable. As this integral evidence to testify to an interchange of diverse civilizations and cultures, the serial nomination bears interrelated functional elements and causal relationship necessary for exchange among civilizations, and thus presents a unique cultural phenomenon and combination of philosophy, and also contributes to the spirit of this convention and the UNESCO values in general. It is an integral whole that typically reflects the social, cultural, and functional links as required for a serial property in Article 137 of the operational guidelines. Therefore, Azerbaijan is in view that this nomination should be referred back to the state party, and we encourage the state party to work with the advisory bodies to present those, to address those recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Uganda, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, the delegation of Uganda has comprehensively examined the nomination dossier and the evaluation of ICOMOS, and finds that this serial property demonstrates exceptional propensity for outstanding universal value. Each of the 16 components of the property are by themselves extraordinary in their individualism, in their own individualism, Monasteries and stone pagodas which testify the combined influence of Buddhism, Hinduism, and local beliefs, including the only known sculpture of Mani in the world still worshipped by the local people, as well as the Islamic tombs, which possess two renowned followers of Prophet Muhammad. all of which demonstrate the peaceful coexistence and the prosperous interaction between different cultures and religions back in the 10th, 14th century, when Chenzhou played a pivotal role in the maritime trading networks. My delegation notices that there seems to be some misunderstanding between ICOMOS and the state party. The evaluation of ICOMOS is more concerned about the thematic study on maritime Silk Roads, while the state party considers the maritime Silk Roads as the context for the nominated serial property, which demonstrates the interchange and fusion of diverse cultures and civilizations resulting from maritime trade. As pointed out several times by many committee members from the beginning of this session, we need to strengthen the dialogue between the state parties and the advisory boards. My delegation therefore agrees with the delegations of Tunisia, Kuwait, Zimbabwe, and Azerbaijan to refer the nomination back to the state party so that additional information could be provided to ICOMOS to clarify the misunderstanding. Madam Chair, I conclude with a humble request that you accord the state part of China the opportunity to provide its response to the concerns of ICOMOS. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Cuba, now you have the floor.
Gracias, señora presidenta.
Thank you, Chair. The nomination of this site, which is made up of 16 different elements, is without doubt a very interesting and complete nomination. The advisory body in its own report recognise the efforts that have been made by the state party. That is to say, in the tentative lists of China, as well as in its efforts to have this property inscribed on the World Heritage List, taking into account the actions of the state party to try and promote the OUV of this site, we believe that this nomination should be referred to the state party. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. Brazil endorses the amendment to the draft decision 42 COM 8B18. Brazil also thanks ICOMOS and the Secretariat for the summary reports on the nomination of historic monuments and sites in ancient Chenzhou. The nomination by the State Party of China contains a large number of historic buildings with different typologies linked to the time of the high prosperity in Chenzhou's history and bearing witness to the intense inter-exchange of cultures, knowledge, technologies, and trade. The serial property represents the most significant characteristics of Chenzhou's prominence in cultural and goods exchange from the 10th to the 14th century, including evidence of Confucianism, Buddhism, Taoism, Islam, Manichaeism, Nestorianism, Hinduism, and local belief systems. The nomination proposed has a high potential outstanding universal value, as, if I'm not mistaken, recognized by ICOMOS. Though ICOMOS report anticipate as a methodology the thematic studies on maritime Silk Roads and takes note of the insufficiency in this respect, it is positive on the high potential of nomination as well as its boundaries and buffer zones and the state of conservation. Brazil, therefore, thinks the nomination is a good embodiment of UNESCO's value of cultural diversity and intercultural dialogue. In a spirit of encouragement and conservation, Brazil supports the Tunisian amendment of the decision to referral of the nomination to the State Party for further dialogue with the advisory bodies in order to demonstrate its OUV. If you allow me, Madam, as a general comment, I would like to take this opportunity to highlight the need for an in-depth analysis of the procedures and conceptual framework of serial nominations. We understand that a broader discussion should be fostered in order to produce some new technical inputs for both the World Heritage Center and the advisory bodies, as well as to the State Party, in the context of the preparation and presentation of nominations and in the subsequent management of the enlisted sites with a view to adequately assuring OUV. Thank you very much, Madam.
Thank you very much. Now, Angola, you have the floor.
Madame la Présidente.
Thank you for giving me the floor, Chair. After having very closely examined the report presented by ICOMOS regarding the case of monuments and sites of ancient Guangzhou, we can say that we have before us an extremely important site from a historical point of view, especially when we look at its link to the maritime Silk routes, therefore facilitating trade between the 10th and the 14th century between different regions of the world. Now we see that the State Party has presented a comparative analysis, and we see that the OUV criteria are present, notably criteria 3 and 6, which show the multicultural characteristics of this period in the Guangzhou site. Indeed, we can also appreciate the majesty of the stone architecture in this site, and also the production techniques that were used, as well as the other elements such as social cohesion and mutual respect that existed between different peoples of those times along this Silk route in this region of the world. Chair, given what we have just heard, we fully support the amendment presented by Tunisia, and they therefore recommend that the nomination is referred to give the State Party an opportunity to push on with its efforts in terms of improving the quality of its document, while focusing on issues of integrity and management, and through developing a trans-boundary dialogue alongside its dialogue with ICOMOS, the Centre and other state parties. Thank you, Chair.
Very much. And now the floor is for Bosnia.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Chair. Bosnia-Herzegovina believes that this property fulfills criterion 2, 3 and 6. The importance of the Zayton port in relation to the maritime Silk roads allowed for an urban civilization to be formed between the 10th and the 14th century, and indeed the vestiges in this area bear witness to this, and they are in a remarkable condition regarding their preservation. We believe that the components proposed show the coexistence and the interaction between several confessions and communities. We therefore believe that the OUV in this respect has been fulfilled. We do not share ICOMOS's view that we must wait for a thematic study to be carried out on the maritime Silk routes. Just like our colleague from Kuwait, we would also like to recall that a study was carried out through UNESCO, an integral study on the Silk routes, in which 90 experts from 20 countries were involved. And they were able to show the exceptional importance of Kangzhou through their work. We therefore believe that a referral is the right choice. Thank you.
Now, Indonesia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The State Party has nominated the property as an independent city that serves as a heritage of Song and Qing dynasty. Taking into account the evaluation that has been done by the advisory body, of which we would like to commend, Indonesia is of the view that the site deserves to be included in the World Heritage List, and along with this inclusion, we would recommend the nomination to be referred back to the State Party. We encourage the State Party to come up with a clear plan to refine the justification for the OUV, more precise definition of the boundaries and buffer zones, strengthen the coordination of management between the components of the serial property, and consider a stronger engagement of maritime and port organizations within the management system. We also encourage the State Party to maintain close work with the advisory bodies and explore possibilities of further conserving the OUV of the property. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, Tanzania, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Tanzania wishes to thank the State Party of China for bringing up this wonderful nomination that tries to demonstrate a prominent node in the maritime trading routes in the 10th to the 14th centuries. Tanzania also commends the advisory body for the in-depth analysis of this nomination, which has resulted in a number of recommendations to be considered by this committee. Chair, this serial property consists of 16 components that are proposed for nomination to represent the geocultural influence and the intercultural exchanges between China, Southeast, and East Africa. Chair, the advisory body, ICOMOS, in its analysis, considers that Criteria 2 is relevant to the important history of cultural interchange that occurred during the transcontinental maritime trading in the 10th and 14th centuries. However, they are saying not all the components are relevant to this nomination. The present justification by the State Party on Criteria 3 is not well integrated into the argument for the outstanding universal value, and that too little information is presented to sustain this as a possible justification for the criteria. The cultural character of this period of Chanju history is potentially demonstrated by the nominated components that are associated with various religions. While this is a notable aspect of the history and the development of Chanju, there is insufficient comparative evidence to establish that this is an understanding within its geocultural context. Excellent Chair, Tanzania delegation, having gone through the analysis of the ICOMOS, notes that Criteria 2 could be used to dominate the nomination dossier and the Criteria 3. However, there is some work to be done before we can conclude this nomination. We therefore, Tanzania delegation, wish to conclude by saying, by allowing the State Party in collaboration with the advisory bodies, be given adequate time to further work on the interesting nomination dossier by referring the nomination back to the State Party. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Now the floor is for Australia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Australia also appreciates the very large amount of work that's gone into this nomination, and we do consider that this work illustrates the great significance of the city as a node of international maritime trade, as a node in the networks of international trade from the 10th to the 14th centuries. We also agree that the 16 components of the nominated site are remarkable in illustrating the architectural and sculptural forms of the period and the cultural and religious diversity of the city. We'd like to thank ICOMOS for the thorough appraisal of the nomination dossier, and particularly in taking the thematic approach that they have to identifying potential OUV. We do consider, on the basis of the information we've been presented, that there is a potential for this property to demonstrate OUV against Criterion 2 and Criterion 3. However, further clarification of the potential OUV and its attributes is needed, and for this reason, Australia considers that a decision to defer the nomination is logical to allow the state party to work with ICOMOS to further define the potential OUV of the site. However, on hearing the comments of our distinguished colleagues in the room, we see that there is a move for referral of this dossier, and Australia can support the amendments as presented.
Thank you very much. Hungary, you have the floor.
Thank you, dear Chairperson. Regarding this nomination, the ancient Kansu was the center of maritime Silk Road connections between China and the Western world in the 11th, 14th century ED. The significance of the site, therefore, does not raise any question or doubt. The nomination dossier elaborated and submitted reflects this fact. It is also to be emphasized that Kansu was in this period a very important meeting place used for religious practices and different cultures, as proven by the great number of shrines, sanctuaries and temples of Buddhism, Hinduism, Confucianism and other gods. However, the nomination had some deficiencies regarding the successful definitions of OUV, as well as the full description and evaluation of the connections between the property and the Silk Road program, with special attention on the thematic study. Despite these deficiencies, according to the Hungarian delegation, the OUV could be proven by the state party. Therefore, recommends that the decision should not be non-inscription, but deferral or referral, and the committee should provide the state party the possibility to work further on the nomination. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now, Kyrgyzstan, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Delegation of Kyrgyzstan carefully studied all the documents provided with the nomination, and also studied information exchange between the state party and ICOMOS. In order to save time, I will not repeat what has been already said by distinguished delegates of other countries at the committee session. We would like just to mention that selection of components meets criteria 2, 3, and 6. And also, we should note that selected components retain a high degree of authenticity and integrity. All repairs over the sweep of history are clearly evidenced by historical documents, inscriptions and archives, and a set of monuments and sites under the highest level protection by the state party. The serial nomination is protected and managed in accordance with international professional rules and procedures. All repair practices comply with the spirit and requirements expressed in the operational guidelines for the implementation of the World Heritage Convention. Therefore, our delegation supports the amendment proposed by other countries.
Thank you very much. Guatemala, you have the floor.
Gracias.
Thank you, Chair. We congratulate the State Party for the nomination, and we also thank ICOMOS for the analysis regarding this nomination and the encouragement of the State Party to continue working on the thematic theme of the maritime silk routes. Indeed, there can be no doubts about the historical and architectural wealth of this property, as well as the way it bears witness to a system, to belief systems, as well as cultural or intercultural phenomena that existed in the past, And indeed, we cannot doubt the cultural diversity as being a tool that can be used as a dialogue for peace. We therefore support the amendment and hope that the State Party will continue working towards improving this nomination, working alongside experts so that it can fully respect the recommendations that the advisory bodies have communicated to the State Party. Thank you.
The floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Norway would like to take this opportunity to commend the State Party for excellent management of the World Heritage in China. In this regard, with good Chinese tradition, we are convinced that the State Party will continue to keep doing so in the future. We also commend the State Party for its highly valuable contributions to capacity building and other ways of promoting protection and good management of World Heritage in the Asia-Pacific region and worldwide. Even though the State Party has recently provided important additional information to the committee on the nomination in question, ICOMOS still has several remarks. Based on the information thus far, it is Norway's view, like Australia and Hungary, that a more comprehensive description of this nomination could still be further developed. Norway, therefore, supports the amendment for referral and encourage the State Party to continue the constructive dialogue with the advisory body. Norway welcomes and encourages the thematic study on maritime silk routes commenced a year ago and the potential for serial World Heritage nominations within such a frame. Hopefully, the State Party will continue its significant support and contribution to this important study in collaboration with the World Heritage Center and the advisory bodies. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Now, Spain, you have the floor.
Gracias, señora.
Thank you, Chair. We simply wish to support the amendment that's been presented by the other delegations, because we believe that the State Party needs to be given time to be able to go further with with proving the outstanding universal value of this property. And indeed, we also believe that the advisory bodies will need to support them in this in order for them to reach objectives. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I give China the floor to answer the questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As many distinguished international colleagues mentioned, historical monument site of ancient Quanzhou Zatong is a serial property that features outstanding achievement and the contributions resulting from the interchange and the fusion of values of diverse cultures, both tangible and intangible, through maritime routes over the specific period of the 10th to 14th centuries. The serial properties, both collectively and individually, maintains a high level of authenticity and integrity within the framework of the cultural diversity. However, in fact, in its report, ICOMOS has set a nomination precondition for this project that are not supported by the existing World Heritage rules and practices. That is, there must be a mature, integral thematic study of ancient international maritime trade and the cultural exchange associated with the nomination, and the attributes and the features of the nomination as an ancient port and the node of cultural interchange must demonstrate the urban fabric. It seems that ICOMOS, its evaluation report, does not fully consider the commonly used way, which is indeed logical and practical of presenting a World Heritage site that features as a monument and site. Furthermore, ICOMOS in its evaluation report also questioned the authenticity and integrity of the nomination, with ambiguous arguments that are not supported by concrete information and related analysis. Even ICOMOS seems to neglect the fact that some major restoration work carried out in the 14th to 10th to 14th century, but not in recent modern period. The selected party is in the comparative analysis provides related properties of monument sites and historical towns inscribed on the World Heritage List. Long before relevant and mature thematic study was established. But ICOMOS then explained its evaluation report that the case cited about the comparative analysis were inscribed because they were outstanding enough in their own. So the logic of ICOMOS can be understood as the following properties can be nominated before the potential thematic framework is mature if they are outstanding enough. However, the criteria to justify if the property are outstanding enough or not should be based on the maturity of the thematic study. Such logic can somewhat is chicken and leg paradox. This really makes us confused and helpless. Some senior international colleagues deeply share the same feeling about this. I'm sorry that I have to repeat one of the comments here whose reference has been authorized by the author, but that would make a little unhappy. The expert of the ICOMOS technical evaluation mission was surprised after reading the ICOMOS interim report and said, I have had a careful look at the report from ICOMOS and I too am rather confused. The report in some cases I really do not understand what they mean. When reading the final evaluation report of ICOMOS, they even comment the justification of the criticism of the submission by the state party are extremely biased and negative. Indeed, the whole document is very strange. So as a result, the party has to request the committee of the ICOMOS evaluation report by the committee re-examination. We are sorry, but we have to do so. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. And now I give the floor to the reporter to give us the amendments.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I have received amendments on this draft decision presented by Angola, Azerbaijan, Bahrain, Bosnia, Brazil, Burkina Faso, Cuba, Guatemala, Indonesia, Kuwait, Kyrgyzstan, Tunisia, Uganda, Tanzania, and Zimbabwe. As you know, the original draft decision proposed that this property should not be inscribed on the list of World Heritage. The presented amendments instead propose that this nomination be referred back to the state party. As such, the draft decision that you can see on the screen right now as amended details what additional information would be requested from the state party, and it also contains 2 new paragraphs with further recommendations to the state party as well as to the World Heritage Center to give special attention towards the preparation of a comprehensive thematic study on the maritime silk routes in collaboration with the advisory bodies. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Is there any comments? Shall we add? Azerbaijan, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have just small precision in the paragraph 2b, where instead of define, we would like to propose describe, which will fully complies with the recommendation in the evaluation report of the ICOMOS. So this describe word was reflected in the evaluation report of ICOMOS. So we would like to keep it as it was in the ICOMOS report. Thank you.
Is there any objection? We can replace? Wording? Okay, no objection.
So you can ask whether the whole decision can be now adopted.
Have you inserted the changes? Okay. Can we adopt the whole decision? Yes? Okay. I therefore declare draft decision 42, 8B, 18 adopted. now I give the floor to Mrs. Rossler to explain, to clarify some points.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I have heard a question from Brazil or a comment from Brazil on the issue of serial nominations and serial sites. I would like to inform the committee that there have been reflections on this topic. It's the so-called Ettingen report, which is actually on our webpage. But this is a couple of years ago, and you have experienced quite a number of new serial nominations, even serial transboundary nominations, which came in from 12 countries. So I think the advisory bodies and the World Heritage Center would be very happy to continue the reflections with the committee to encompass some of the concerns which were raised here in the committee. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I see China before we have the announcements. Thank you.
Thank you very much. China, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. China appreciates and commends the decision adopted by the committee. China expresses sincere gratitude to the members of and experts of the World Heritage Committee for their scientific spirit, professionalism, and impartiality. As stated in the dossier submitted by China, the Quanzhou project has the outstanding universal value required by the World Heritage List, and the value it carries has not only important historical significance, but also positive relevance to the world today. China is willing to engage in dialogue and strengthen the cooperation with advisory bodies in order to inscribe this important serial nomination in the World Heritage List at its earliest possible dates. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have announcement, and then we can.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So tonight you have at 6:30 the making of the policy compendium, which is in room Muharak, and at 6:30 also the Belize Barrier Reef Reserve Systems, the power of collective action, in room Hava, which is following the great success of the removal of the Belize Barrier Reef. And as usual, we have the Bureau tomorrow at 9:30. So have a nice evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We come to the end of our session of today. We see you tomorrow.